Hello, can you guys hear me? I'm on another PC. I'm in the studio. It's my other location. And, actually, what happened yesterday, that was at my home. And I get a lot of distractions at home. So there are noises outside. There are people obviously doing work outside, mowing lawns and other noises, dogs barking. Then there's kids downstairs, that sort of thing. Actually, yesterday, what happened for the last half hour of that stream, and I don't know if you could hear it, so because I was using Nvidia broadcast, so that will give you some sort of idea of how loud things are. And the kids were crying, or the eldest one was crying. This story will just be a minute, but yeah, she had a tick in her ear, and it wasn't like inside her ear. It was just on the outer edge of her ear, in the lobe, and we thought there was something wrong a couple of days ago, and we didn't really think too much of it because we couldn't really see it, or she didn't want us to see. So we kind of go, oh, okay. We see a few black dots here and there, and then we thought, okay, well, don't worry about it. And then yesterday, the tick actually grew to like 100 times its size. I don't want to show you. If you want to see, maybe you come into my Discord and ask me. But yeah, then she started to panic, and yeah, lots of crying for about an hour in that stream yesterday. And then I think 3 hours was more than enough for Steam Deck anyway, but I couldn't even hear myself talk while there was all the screaming downstairs. And so if you couldn't hear it, that's how good Nvidia Broadcast is. Now on this machine, I don't have Nvidia Broadcast, so but I don't think there are any noises here. There's no one else here. There's no kids, no outside noises. So I think we're good to go. I'm not going to get distracted unless the phone calls and there's an emergency or something like that. So hopefully everyone, all you guys are feeling good. Hope you guys had a good day. And yeah, we're going to talk more Steam Deck today. So I said pretty much all that I had to say, but there have been some updates in the last 24 hours. And I was coming here anyway, so I figured, oh, well, why don't we just do a live stream? Yesterday we got a lot of people in the stream. I know it doesn't seem like a lot of people, 20 people at a time, but for me that's a lot. And today's Friday. Hopefully there's more people coming in, and I'll just update you guys on some of the latest things that have come up with this Steam Deck that I think is pretty interesting, and a few people have asked me as well. So what we're going to do is for the first 10-15 minutes, I'll go through the updates. Then I'll get to your chat, wherever that is. I've lost it for the time being. Then I'll get to the chat. I'll answer your questions. And then after that, I want to get to some of the internet reaction about the Steam Deck, because there's already this type of competition brewing between, it's almost like people want a debate. People are desperate for this, like Switch versus Steam Deck. And yeah, they're coming out more or less at the same time, Christmas this year, but it's almost like people just want to pick a fight, which fair enough. Like, you know, the Switch OLED is $349, the base model of the Steam Deck is $399. So it's like, okay, people have to decide one or the other, really. Like, how much time do people really have to play both of them at once? We'll get into all of that sort of thing, but seems like there's a lot of takes. Like some people saying the Switch is irrelevant, some people saying that the Steam Deck is going to, that's all they need. They don't have to worry about the Nintendo Switch anymore. We're going to get into all of that. And hopefully you guys keep it as entertaining as yesterday in the chat. So keep those questions coming along in the chat. I'm looking at it right now. And yesterday, you know, I went back through some of the stream. Sometimes I'm a little bit worried if the stream is a total disaster, especially like when there are noises outside and I can't even hear myself think. But yesterday it was still pretty good. Confirmed SK says share on Discord. Yeah, I will do. I don't really want to like post it on YouTube for everyone to see. But yeah, I'll post it in the Discord. There's a Discord link in the description, so please join us in the Discord. It is fun. There's only a few people there right now, so you know, you're going to get more attention if you go in the Discord. Okay, where are we? So let me just quickly answer Corgi's question. Hello, I have a question. Will there be another time I can pre-order the Valve? Well, I think they're just going to keep the reservations running, and I don't think they're going to have, well, maybe like if it gets out of hand, maybe if they see that, and we're going to get into stock numbers. So that somebody's leaked some stock numbers online. And so if the number of reservations gets just way too large, I would say like maybe 5 times or 10 times the amount of stock orders, maybe they'll put a stop to the reservations. But I think they are just going to keep it going because it kind of like books your place in line. And I think, you know, with this type of like Kickstarter or Indiegogo type thing, people have been waiting like over a year for their handheld. I think people are okay to make a reservation for something with small numbers manufactured. At least that's my take on it. Maybe some people don't want to wait like 6 months or a year in line for a handheld console or a console. Well, that's really up to you to decide. I think by doing it this way through a Steam account, it at least gets rid of all the scalpers. Yes, the scalpers are probably going to set up a ton of Steam accounts and probably going to order a lot of, but at least like, maybe they weren't as prepared, you know, the first, I don't know, 24 hours or something like that to get set up. So hopefully a lot of people were able to order the Steam Deck. For me, it's not available in the Asia region just yet. So actually, I feel pretty good about that because then I don't have to worry about it. I can spend a little bit more time to think about whether I should get one or not. And I'm kind of on the edge whether to get one. Sometimes I feel like, okay, I better get one. I can use it for this YouTube channel. But at the same time, because like I said yesterday, it really feels like, you know, how much time do I really have to play all of these systems? And I've had that moments in my life where I had like a PS3, Xbox 360, a Wii, and you kind of don't spend enough time on everything. So there's a limited amount of time. So I'm still thinking about whether to get one or not. But first, we're going to spend the first 10-15 minutes on some of the updates and keep the questions in the chat coming along, and I'll answer them after this segment. All right, so there's been a lot of talk about the SSD because with the Steam Deck, let me get into the browser here. Let's go. Okay, so I think the prices are down here. All right, so, and have to, okay, let me, all right. So $399 for the 64 gigabytes eMMC internal storage, which runs like an SD card style type of system. Now, this is fairly similar, or it's going to be pretty much the same as a Switch. We don't know exactly how fast this eMMC is going to go, but just imagine Switch, because obviously it's a different class to the SSD internal storage in the other two models. Hello, South members. Thank you again for the super chat. I will get to all of the super chats after this 10-minute segment. I just want to put all the news up front, so later on I'm going to do a chapter on it. People can come back and look at this 10-15-minute segment. Okay, so the $529 model is 256 gigabytes. It has an SSD, and then the $649 has a 512 gigabyte SSD. Now, yesterday when I was looking at this, if you look at the tech specs, took 1 hour and 30 minutes to reserve the 512. Is that because it just completely shut down? Is that what you're saying? Like the orders were just, you couldn't get through? Is that how it worked? Or was there some sort of like lining system? Hello, Indra Gunawan. Today is Saturday. Yes, it's a great day to do a stream. Okay, so what was I saying about the SSD here is interesting, okay? Because like it says here, 64 gigabytes of eMMC and 256 gigabytes NVMe SSD. Now, maybe this is like a early Gen 3 model that does like 1.8 gigabytes per second transfer speed, like a read-write. And then the 512 is like the 3.5 gigabytes the faster one. So maybe that's what they're doing. And it does cost a little bit more. It's like $20, $30 more in retail if you get the same size, and one is the faster transfer speed. So the 512 has the faster SSD. The only question I really have, right, is whether the 64 gigabyte model loads up the Steam OS quick enough. Maybe people don't really mind too much because it's got the quick resumes, and then you can just like plug it in and keep it charged. You don't even have to turn it off ever. But I think it's going to make a difference with loading games, because I played a few games on the Switch, things like third-party games. Maybe they're not as optimized for the Switch. So I was playing WRC 9, which is a third-party game, and that took like a minute for almost every loading scene. And I'm sure that would be much faster in an SSD. And WRC 9 is the type of game that I would expect to run pretty well on the Steam Deck. So they're the kind of games I would run on the Steam Deck. I probably wouldn't run things like Cyberpunk 2077 or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but something like sort of mid-power PS4 type games, that's the type of thing I want to run on this thing. So, and 1 minute on WRC 9 on Switch feels too long. And it could be the same for like a lot of these other games with long loading times on hard drives. So you could almost test this out yourself, play some games on your hard drive, see how they load, and it should be roughly comparable to what we're getting with this eMMC. And if you're comfortable with those speeds, then maybe the hard drive is the way to go. And as I said yesterday with the 64 gigabyte model, the 64 gigabyte model is really for someone who knows exactly what they want. So you know exactly the games you want to play and the games you don't want to play. If you're undecided, if you think like, oh, I feel like, you know, giving Cyberpunk 2077 a try, even though I know it's just going to be bad, but it'll be fun to like just goof around in that anyway. I think, yeah, then you probably want to go for one of the other models, the SSD. Okay, but anyway, getting back to this update. Okay, finally we have some news. Okay, so Gabe, this is Gabe. Now, there was another tweet, and I've been rushing to get this stream set up, so I've only got this one screenshot, but there was another one where Gabe referred to somebody else. He said the slot was like M2280, and I'd have to dig back into my Twitter feed to find it. But just assume that it's the M2280. I might try and find it during one of the breaks in a second. But yeah, so this is the M2 SSD slot. And the question was, is the M2 SSD slot present in the base $399 version? A lot of people were thinking, well, if it's in the 256 gigabyte model, I just want to upgrade that and put a 1 terabyte stick in. So then I wouldn't even have to bother with the 512. And the thinking yesterday that I had with the yesterday when all of the news was released was, well, if they're going to do a 256 gigabyte model and a 512, I would assume that that SSD is pretty much soldered on like the PS5 is, so that you couldn't remove it. That would force you to buy either the 256 or 512. However, it seems as though that you can remove the SSD, because he obviously says that it's an M2 SSD slot, a standard slot. So if you buy the 256 gigabyte model, theoretically you should be able to upgrade your SSD. Okay, so we're almost like 70-80% sure that you can do it. Now the reason I say 70-80% is because we have another update here. This is from Lashman, Plagman. Now Plagman, let me tell you who Plagman is. It says there's a tweet somewhere down here. Plagman is Pierre from the Steam Deck reveal, from the IGN reveal. 7 actually, plus a ketchup dispenser. I forgot what Pierre's last name was. But it was Pierre, and I can't find it right now. But it's Pierre from the Steam Deck presentation on IGN. Okay, where was I? Now let me let me go back to the Discord news. So Plagman, he says, oh, okay, here we go. Here's Plagman. Plagman is Pierre-Loup Griffet. He's the main guy you see in most of the interviews for the Steam Deck. Okay, so this is pretty legit. I don't think somebody just decided to make or plagiarize or make this up. So Plagman says, no, they didn't. It requires opening the hardware in unsupported ways. So warranty is in your hands at that point. The slot is behind EMI and thermal shielding, so it's not really user replaceable like a regular M2 tray on a laptop. Okay, so this is going to be tricky, and if it was as easy as just putting in an SSD slot in a PC, then they would say so. I don't think they have any reason to lie. So when they say thermal shielding, I think they're just gluing that onto that SSD. The EMI, I'm not exactly sure what EMI is. And I probably don't know if I'll be able to find it. I don't know how to motherboard or SSD. I don't think I'd be able to. Electromagnetic interference, maybe that's it for SSDs. So this could be trickier to do. Now let me go back. So it's possible. The slot is there, and I think Gabe is almost thinking at it as like, hey, those tinkerers can get to it, so I better say yes, you know, there is a slot there. Obviously he's a busy guy, and he didn't really elaborate much. He knows that like people will be able to hack into it and get to it. But I think this is going to be trickier for people who are not used to this type of thing. And so there's another sort of, it's not really an update because they already said this in the IGN video, the IGN FAQ video. So IGN asked, is the storage upgradable? Lawrence Yang says the internal storage is not, but every deck will come with an SD card slot. So you can put an SD card slot, whatever size you want, whenever you want. So he says that in the video as well. And then Pierre also says it in the video as well, that the internal storage is not really replaceable or upgradable. And I think because he was talking to the IGN audience, the people who probably are more familiar with consoles, there's quite a large console audience there. So he didn't want to confuse anyone and just say, oh yeah, you know, you can upgrade it. The slot is there, and it might be difficult to get into. So I guess people are going to have to decide for themselves whether they're going to be game enough to go and take it all apart. On a scale of like how bad it is, it's probably like a 7 out of 10, I think. Maybe you'll need some special screwdrivers, or you'll have to glue some stuff back on, and so there may be cases where, you know, there are no screws or anything, or you don't know what's going on, but you're going to have to pry something open or get a heat gun to remove the glue or whatever. So it could be like that. Okay, so before I get into the next piece of news, actually no, I'm going to keep the chat until this other piece of news because I think this is going to be pretty quick. So that was on the SSD part, so hopefully that gave you some idea like which one you're going to go for, whether you're going to go for the 64, 256 or 512. So it's going to be difficult to get into it, but it's not impossible. Okay, so let's talk about stock numbers. So Pavel, now I haven't, actually I may as well just go and follow him, but he's the creator of Steam database. So I guess he has some connections to people who work at Steam as well. Or maybe not, maybe people in Steam don't really like SteamDB, but he has a leak for the number of units for the Steam Deck. And I think this is super interesting. Let me bring up another piece of information as well before we get into the Steam Deck reservations, because you guys, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about like, well, how many units would be successful for the Steam Deck. So let me just quickly find this. 3 in the end. So GBD Win, the number of units are sold during the Kickstarter period or Indiegogo period, and the Neo number of units. And sorry, I always have to bring a narrative into everything, but I think it's useful to have some sort of like comparison, like how many of these actually sold. Like, if you're not sure, have a guess how many in the chat, like how many Neo sold in Indiegogo and how many GBD Win 3 sold. Neo, Indiegogo. Okay, so let me reveal the answer. I hope you can see it. So, okay, so that's Malaysian ringgit, but you divide by 4, so it's about $4 million, I believe. And there were 5,777 backers for the, so about 6,000 people bought the GBD Win 3, and obviously more people bought it at retail as well, but that was the initial period for the GBD Win 3. Now for the Neo, it was about 2,500 people. So altogether, the number of people that are interested in this, about less than 10,000. And I totally understand like where they're sort of coming from, because, you know, this is a unproven company. And so people are maybe not ready to splash out that much. So this wasn't cheap. Like, this is $900. So you're in the territory of a boutique sort of gaming experience where you're almost paying more for less performance, but the offset or the benefit is that you get to take it on the go. And it's almost like, I guess like this is almost a way that you'd want to play, that you just want to try out. It's kind of like not the preferred method. Like if you have this type of Neo, and then you also have the option to play it on your desktop with like an RTX 30 series card, then I think most people are just going to go, okay, well, it's fun to play it for a few hours on the portable, but to get the best experience, I probably need to go back to the 30 series desktop PC. But anyway, the number of units. Pavel Jundik says that the number of units for the 512 gigabyte model in the US is about 50,000, and in Europe it's about 8,500, and in the UK it's about 7,000. Now actually that's really surprising that the UK has so many units versus versus Europe. I mean, how many people are in Europe versus how many people are in the UK? It's almost like it's going to be really hard to find in Europe. In Europe, what I guess there's maybe like 500 million people, a billion people, somewhere in that range. And in Great Britain, I think there's like 50 to 70 million people, and they have more or less the same number of units. It's going to be easier to get one in the UK. It's going to be hard to get one in Europe. Okay, what about in terms of the segmentation of the different units, like the 64, 256, and 512? Well, I didn't actually say for the 64 gigabyte. Maybe this guy says something. So that model doesn't really exist like the digital PS5 or the 3080. It just exists to say pricing starts at X. Maybe, you know, maybe. But anyway, these are the numbers for the North American 512 model is about 55,000. The North American 256 gigabyte model is 28,000. And the European version is 9,600. The European 256 gigabyte is 5,000. The UK 512 gigabyte is 7,000. So I expected that they wouldn't make that many units because this is the first time, and so they're going to play it safe. They don't want to like create junk. Like they created a ton of Steam links that they were going to end up selling for $1 at GameSpot. Is it GameSpot or GameStop? So they were literally giving those Steam links away because they couldn't get rid of them fast enough. So I think that I understand where they're coming from. This is the first round, and you know, the whole thing about like hype is just really weird to me. Like if you create a few units and you sell out, then it's like, oh, you did well. But if you sell lots of units but you created too many, then you did badly. And if you have a fire sale of the remaining units, you did badly. So you can't really win. The narrative is kind of like whatever people want it to be. But I knew that they would probably go with less number of units. I think generally people or companies prefer to err on the side of caution, except if you're like Sony or if you're Nintendo, even Nintendo at the start, the Switch, they probably were a little bit more apprehensive because the Wii U had done so badly. But obviously when they saw initial numbers, then they decided to go gangbusters and make as many units as possible. But at the start they were literally just grabbing stuff, the Nvidia Tegra chip that Nvidia couldn't get rid of, so they thought, okay, well, we'll get a cheap price for that, let's buy some of those and make a handheld out of that. So there you go, those stock numbers. And honestly, for the size of the audience or the reach it has, the fact that the IGN video already viewed by 1 million people, the fact that there's 100 million people on Steam, maybe more, active users, by the way, I think, of course they're going to sell out on 55,000 units. They could have made 500,000 units and they probably could have sold them. I mean, your install base is 100 million and you're telling everybody on your Steam store, hey, we've got 500,000, like we just need 5% of you guys to go and buy one. And I think people would have. Now, this is more like 0.5% of that 100 million active users. So yeah, of course, it's not going to be enough. And anyone can just go run the numbers. And if you are somebody that want to get one, and I'm not selling it for them, I'm not paid by Steam or anything like that, I'm just a fan like you guys, like do the math, guys. This is going to be in heavy demand, and if you don't get it now, it's going to be a problem later on to get one. And eBay, I think people are putting the Steam Deck on, they are saying that they have reservations for their Steam Deck, and they're trying to sell their Steam Deck already, which is a bit bizarre because you could just go and order one now anyway. So Steam Deck, 512 gigabytes. Somebody is already putting it up in auction for this. The Valve Steam Deck 512 gigabyte model pre-sale is $1,200. Yeah, so generally it's almost like people do a 2x and do a 2x flip. So it's not surprising the console starts 2x. Okay. And I think you know where this is all going. It's all going to be like about $1,200. I think people know that what the numbers represent and how many people are out there. Okay, let's get into some of this chat now. Those were pretty much the two pieces of news that I want to bring you. So like if you are someone who just wants the news, that's going to be the end of that. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go into the chat and go through some of the questions or comments people might have and chat to people. If you're in the chat now, put something in the chat so we can keep this lively. I'm going to go for as long as you guys, it'll be about 2 hours, I think. But I'll go for as long as you guys want to go for. And then after that, after all the chat's done, then I'm going to go and look at some of the internet reaction, at least on my Twitter feed, of what people have been saying about the Steam Deck and the Switch OLED as well. Okay. So thank you so much to South Memphis. Now, I don't know if your $5 didn't go through, or you've just put $5 in again. You've put 3 times, so that's unbelievable. That's the most I ever, $5 is the most I ever got anyway. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. And it makes me want to like keep providing content, but obviously I'm not just doing it for the dollars. It's because I just genuinely want to chat to you guys about gaming. So yeah, this is fun to talk about gaming, talk to you guys. But thank you for the super chat. And South Memphis says it took an hour and 30 minutes to reserve the 512. So I'm guessing maybe they had some sort of like line system where you had to wait, or was it because it just went to a error like 404 or something like that? I haven't done the reservation thing because in my region, it's not available in my region. But I think maybe like when I go back to Australia, I'll probably think about getting one then. Yeah, I'm not too bothered about trying to get one from eBay US or anything like that. Indra Gunawan says, hi Jim, today is Saturday. Sure is. Great day for a stream, great day to play games. A little bit more relaxed as well. So I hope you're having a good Saturday. Confirmed SK, if this gains traction, Linux becomes the gaming hub. Well, does it? Because there's so many people on Windows. So for people to, for developers to not develop on Windows, you're going to have to show growth in Linux for people to consider Linux. And then also, it's almost like if Linux gains traction, it almost needs its kind of own store, right? If you have the same sort of store, like a Steam store, if you have a Linux store, then you're competing with less Linux developers. So then maybe Linux developers consider that more and go, okay, well, I'd rather develop here because there's less competition. Kind of a bit like VR in some ways. Like when VR started, there's this competing thing where, well, there's less number of developers on VR, so maybe I'll go and develop there, and maybe people would be more willing to spend money. But if I develop something on Steam, then sure, there's lots of users there, but it may not get seen by a lot of people, and it might just get forgotten about. So there's this kind of competing thing, and there's so many people on Windows right now. There's like, I don't know how many billions of people on Windows. So Linux is kind of tricky. I don't know. I'm taking it that you use Linux a lot, so you're familiar with Linux. I think as somebody who only dabbles in Linux a little bit, I've used the Raspberry Pi, for example, but mostly on Windows. I think the transition is medium to difficult. In terms of at least doing the same things that you want. I think everyone's mindset over the past like 20, 30 years has always, I'm talking mainstream people now, has always had this sort of Windows mindset to everything. So then to suddenly translate that to Linux is going to be tricky for a lot of people. And I know people who didn't even want to go to Mac OS because it's a transition from what they know. And Windows and Mac OS is pretty close. Like, it's pretty easy to transition between those two. But I think Linux is a different step because there's security and permissions and all of that sort of thing that are different. The file system is different. But yeah, I mean, like if you wanted to just use word processing and all that, that's not difficult. Okay. So is John Paul Bacon, good question. So is the OS going to be Windows, Android, or Linux? So the OS, the Steam OS, will be Steam OS 3, which is based on Linux. Now, yesterday I had a link up for Steam OS, and I'll just quickly go over this. So what is Steam OS and Proton? I'll do like a 1-minute quick summary. So essentially, Proton is a compatibility layer on top of Linux. So Steam OS is Linux. And then you're going to, most games will already run in Steam OS and Proton, and then Proton's going to make this Windows version work on Steam OS. I hope that makes sense, but essentially that's all you really have to know. Most of your games are going to run on Steam OS on this device. You don't have to worry like whether it says Windows or Linux. Most of your games are going to work via Proton. And yeah, so you'd only have to worry about SteamOS if you are getting into the Windows Explorer part, not Windows, the same thing like the File Explorer or whatever it is called in SteamOS and things like that. So if you get into the actual OS part of the system, then you'd probably have to worry that it's SteamOS and that it's going to be Linux based. But if you're just playing games with like this sort of handheld or big picture mode that you've got there, I don't think you have to worry about the Windows games, whether they work or not. Now, most of them should work. There may be some issues sometimes, but by and large, they're saying that SteamOS and Proton, it should work. Like, I don't know what the percentage is, but like a very high percentage should work. Now, of course, with this also comes the fact that you may have different launchers as well. So you may have Epic Games or Ubisoft or Good Old Games. Now, they use something else. So Proton is just for SteamOS, and it looks like they use something called Lutris. Now, Lutris is somewhere in here. Okay. So, non-Steam games on Steam Deck. Okay, so you can run, in this photo, they've got Epic Games running on SteamOS on Linux, and they're running it through something called Lutris. But that's something you can worry about later on down the track to install and all of that. But you don't have to, I guess, worry if there is a solution out there. There is, but I have not tried it myself, so I don't know how compatible and how well it works. Like, whether you're going to play every single game to 100% completion without any errors, that sort of thing. I don't know. But it's doable. Okay, so that should answer that question. Now, where are we? Indra Gunawan, default a Linux-based Arch Linux, but you can install Windows. Oh yeah, you can install Windows on this if you want. You may need to get different drivers and things to get your controls and trackpads and things to work, but I'm pretty sure that Steam are going to release that sort of thing, because I know there are going to be people who want to install Windows. They want to play things like PUBG and Destiny 2. It says here you need to play Destiny 2, but anti-cheat doesn't work so well on Linux. So if you wanted to play it on your Steam Deck, you'd probably have to install Windows to do that. Confirmed SK. Don't get me wrong. The 512 still makes sense because better screen. So if you want the best display and mobile gaming, is not the worst purchase. Yeah, I need to find out more about this screen and like what the difference is. Now, they said that is anti-glare. So it'd be interesting to see those two. And who is actually going to have both of those? There's probably not going to be very many people who are going to have both to be able to do a comparison. I'm sure they'll release some information or some videos about it closer to the date. But at this time, like, I feel like this is something, unless you have it in your hands, unless you'll be able to test it yourself, you really don't know which one you can really choose, whether you're comfortable enough with a 256 or whether you really need to go and get that 512 screen. And also, for me, sometimes I like to put a screen protector on. I don't do it every time, but my Switch Lite came with a screen protector, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to put this on because I like the feeling of that glass on top. Munchie247, will micro SD cards work? Yes, they will. I don't know exactly what the slot is. Let me go and have a look. Oh, look. All models use socketed 2230 M2. I think I said 2280 before, so I apologize for that. I'll make a comment at the top that it's not 2280. I'll amend it. But it's 2230. It's in the tech specs. I don't think anyone's going to be upset if I said that. Yeah, I'll try and do a subtitles maybe. Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, 2230 M2, M.2. Let me see, where was I? All models include high-speed micro SD, so it's a micro SD card slot. And you know, the thing is, like with micro SD card slots, it's going to perform very similar to the Switch. So I don't see a problem. I think with all three models, you're going to run out of space at some point in time. I don't even think 512 is enough anyways. We're talking PC games, and a lot of them are like, you know, 10, 20, 30 gigs easily, a lot of them. And then many games are 50 gigabytes and some games are 100 gigabytes. Even after you install stuff like all the mods that you want to install, you know, I think, yeah, I think 64, 256, 512 is not really that much. And so my point is, like with micro SD cards, I think most people are going to end up playing many games on the micro SD card slots anyway. And then many people are going to see that, you know, I don't think it makes that much difference. And I think people with Switches already know this anyways. So I think they're pretty comfortable. And again, with the 64 gigabyte eMMC version, with that being $399 and the Switch OLED being $349, I think that's super interesting. It's easily more powerful. This is easily more powerful if you want to play. If you just want to get one console and you don't care like what games, like if you don't care if you want Nintendo games, or if you don't want, you just want to play something. 64 gig, like I see a reason for it existing. I know a lot of people are just going to go SSD, but I do see a reason for the 64 gigabyte existing. Maybe later on after that, you could test out the 64 gigabyte, and if you like it a lot, you could get the next revision of this Steam Deck. I think the Steam Deck is popular enough that it will probably have like a couple of revisions. So they're going to improve on this year after year. And, you know, the form factor will probably get slimmer, more comfortable to hold. The ergonomics or the look and feel of it is going to be better. I think I think the Steam Deck is going to be here for a while. One of the biggest things with Steam is that it has such a huge backlog, and I think that's what it's also trying to leverage here. So I think if you look at the storage spaces, I think you can see what they're aiming for, or who their intended audience is for this. This isn't for people who want to play Assassin's Creed, Valhalla, or people who want to play Cyberpunk 2077. Like, think about this. This is like 1 teraflop, okay? And if you have a GTX 970 and you try to play Cyberpunk 2077, you're going to get less than 30 FPS at 1080. And maybe at 720p, maybe you'll get, you know, 30, 40 FPS. So, and that's at 4 teraflops. So it's going to really struggle to run something like a Cyberpunk 2077. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is not going to be far behind that. It's also going to need a beefy GPU. Maybe you can't even play any of the Assassin's Creed on this thing. So that's how far back we're going. Like 2017 Assassin's Creed Origins might not run that well on this. And there have been some videos of the GPT Win 2 trying to run Assassin's Creed at like 7 or 8 frames a second. So yeah, it doesn't run that great. And maybe you'd be able to get 30 FPS now on 720p Assassin's Creed. So maybe you could do it. And I'd almost wager that people are like, well, why am I doing this? Like, why don't I just go back to my desktop PC to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 60 FPS, 1080p? So you can see like, oh, they know that, or they feel like, okay, these are the type of games you want to install on the system. You know, things like, I would say like Dark Souls or Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 3, for example. But earlier like PS4 gen games. Okay, so next question, confirmed SK. It's along the same lines as repasting a laptop these days. Manufacturers put stickers over screws and etc. So you're talking about the SSD and trying to replace the SSD. Well, some of those laptops are really easy to do. Like you just have a opening where you just undo the opening, like it might be held down with a screw or something, and you can get right into the SSD. So I don't know why Steam Deck didn't decide to do this. I think they should have. If they're going to offer that slot, this 2230 slot, it makes no sense to like bury it deep into the system, which is kind of dumb. You're designing this motherboard, and maybe Valve is their first go at hardware, but even still, like they've designed stuff like a Vive, which is perfectly fine. But this slot should have been on the outside. So maybe they would conflict. Maybe they didn't really want people to open it, but they kind of just wanted to say, well, we believe in expandability of PC and that you should be able to do whatever you want with PC, and they kept the slot in there. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's kind of weird that I wish they would have put it so it's an easy to access slot. You just plug in your own 2230 SSD. Steam kind of undersold the demand. It's really hard to say. Like, I had somebody else on my Twitter who says there won't be that many people interested in this. I think what's happening now is that previously it's a very niche group of portable gamers that were interested in this. So you had to have portable gamers and also PC gamers, and maybe that cross section of people was a very small niche of people. So that's why you saw that with ANEO, it sold about 2,500 units. In Indiegogo, GPT Win sold about 5,500, and really that's not a whole lot of units. Even though they made a couple of $1 million, still that's not a whole lot of money for. I guess like I don't know how many people work there. Maybe like 20-30 people work there to make this thing and also produce this device. Because it's going to take engineers, it's going to take designers, it's going to take people who know things, people who procure parts, people who are in logistics, people who are in marketing. It's a lot of people that put together an ANEO and GPT Win. So there really wasn't that many people going to buy these GPT Wins and portable PCs. So maybe Steam also thought, okay, we have to play it safe, and we have to just make sure that we sell every unit that we can make. So I think that's why we see the numbers or the unit numbers being like 55,000, which is really 0.5% of 100 million users. So yeah, of course they're going to not have tons and tons of units. Like, don't put in an order for 10 million units and then sell 9.5 million and only sell 500,000 units and have 9.5 million units left over. They don't want to do that. So I think that's why they're going slow first, see what the demand is like, and then maybe the next iteration there'll be more units. And actually a lot of companies do this anyways. So if you think back to say like the Apple iPhone was so in demand at the start. It was really hard to get even like an iPhone 4, iPhone 3G, and people had to wait like 5 or 6 weeks to get one. And there are tons of scalping with the iPhones, but after many, many iterations, they got better with estimating numbers and how many people want them. So I think this is the kind of thing that for the first one, it's always going to be tough to get. All right, it's confirmed SK, especially in this market and right after Nintendo let down their audience. Well, that's really debatable, you know, whether they let down their audience or not, because the OLED still sold. And when you think about it, Nintendo is going to sell 5 million of these OLED units for like maybe the next 6 months, right? So did they let down their audience if they sell out all of their units? I don't think that would be really much of a letdown. There are still lots of people who haven't bought the Switch or maybe want another Switch. So, and the other thing is Switch is really good for multiplayer. So I can definitely see a reason why people might be thinking about getting a second Switch. And maybe they don't want to go for the Lite because they want the Joy-Cons. So people may buy 2 of these consoles, whereas maybe like a PS5, maybe you'd only get 1 of those. There's so many multiplayer games on Nintendo Switch. That was the primary reason that I bought my Nintendo Switch. I had it for about 3 or 4 years just playing Mario Kart 8, that is, Smash Brothers, and Mario Party. Those 3 games kept me going for about 3 or 4 years with the kids. And then this June, I obviously decided to get a few more games. But I was very happy with the Switch for 3 or 4 years, just playing those games. And yeah, we must have played them for like countless hours. Okay, let's see. South Memphis, thank you so much again for your $5 super chat. This will be even bigger by Black Friday and Christmas. Well, I'm really worried about that, to be honest. I'm really worried about how expensive this is going to be when it's scalped. For sure, you know, adults, they pay a lot more money than things that are for kids. So I could see people buying this for like 3 or 4x the price if they really want one. There's just a lot of people who are well off these days. And you know, they get served first and they don't really mind if they have to pay 3 or 4x because time is more important than money. And what is really $2,000 on this portable for somebody who earns like a few $1 million a year? It's, you know, it's nothing. 2 or 3,000. They might pay like 15,000 for a first class air ticket. So of course they're going to pay like 2,000 to get the Steam Deck. So yeah, it could be 3 or 4x, and then it will make it worse for everybody else. But it is what it is. There's just not enough units. Company's going to play it safe. South Memphis ran into several error codes. Oh right, okay. So from doing the pre-order for 1.5 hours. So South Memphis is saying that maybe there were so many people trying to get one, then it threw back some error codes while he was trying to reserve one, and then it took an hour and a half. Munchie247, when will they ship? Now, people are starting to say that they're getting it shipped Q1 2022. And somebody was asking whether they were able to get, if anybody had Q4 2021. So, and he ordered in the first minute as well. Now, I think he lives in the UK, so maybe it's a little bit different there. So maybe some people in the US will get theirs in Q4. But Q4, we're talking December here anyway. They already said that it's going to be December. Really, the expectation is really just, 2022 most likely, especially if there's a line for this. So don't get your hopes up for Christmas, even though South Memphis says Black Friday and Christmas. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it a little bit more, don't get your hopes up for Christmas. But if it turns up ahead of time, well, that's great. And if it doesn't, like, don't have such high expectations, because there is going to be a line for this. And by the way, you know, I think it takes about 30 days to ship from China to US, about 40 days for China to Europe. So it takes a long time to get these units out. Yeah, it's not easy. Vic Plaza, hello. AAA games work in micro SD card. Okay, so it depends how late of a AAA game you're talking about. Some of the Assassin's Creed games, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, said SSD was optional. So what that means is that it's going to take a long time for you to load up the game, but it should still run fine on the hard drive. Once you load it up into system RAM, it should run okay. However, for the loading time, it could be long. So I recently played Microsoft Flight Sim on a hard drive. It took literally 5 minutes to get into the game, another 5 minutes to load up the plane, another 5 minutes to load up the world map, and actually 5 minutes to actually get into the game proper to actually play the game. Once you are in the game, it played okay. I don't remember that much of it. I was too annoyed by waiting for 15 minutes to actually get in the game and play. So I think that's what they mean when SSD is optional. And I think you'll find that a lot of later on games, like games that have been released in the last couple of years, are going to big AAA games that is are going to be like that. And even Cyberpunk 2077, they recommended an SSD. I think it takes a long time to actually load up the game on the hard drive. But micro SD card, you're going to be able to play smaller games, stuff from PS4 mid-gen earlier, fine on that micro SD card. And yes, I think on eMMC and micro SD, you will get some slowdown. Not slowdown. You will get longer loading times. Okay, longer loading times on that. So it may be a little bit of an annoying thing. So that's the only thing you'd probably have to worry about if you're considering that 64 gigabyte version. Munchie247, aren't reservations still active? Because my dad got 1 hour ago. I think they're going to keep it running until the reservations get too many, or there's too many of them. Then they'll probably stop it, because there's no use for people to wait like 9 months, 12 months for it. And then that also will mean that scalpers can continue to buy them as well. So I think that will stop it at some point. If you want to get one, you better go and reserve one. South Memphis says, will the Steam Deck eventually be sold by retailers? Yeah, I think once it gets popular, they will. But at the moment, 55,000 units, they could probably handle that by themselves anyways. But I kind of like this system where they're doing it via the Steam accounts. It just means that everybody who wanted to get one were probably able to get one. Okay, so that's about all the chat that was there. So if you guys don't have anything else, I'll continue on with some of my other content. But I'll take a break first, and then we'll take a 2-minute break. I'll get a drink and whatnot. You guys go get a drink. And after the break, I'm going to go through some of the internet reaction for the Steam Deck and what people have been saying about this. This is on my Twitter. So maybe it's not quite like, the general consensus. It'll be colored by like who I follow. But I thought there were some really interesting takes there. Some I don't agree with, some I agree with. I think that's going to be interesting. So make sure you stick around for that as well. But we'll go to a 2-minute break first, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Thank you for sticking around. I'm still checking out a few more tweets that I could show you guys. I'm going through my Twitter timeline now, trying to find some Steam Deck tweets that I'd want to comment on. I do have some already lined up, but I was in such a rush doing this because I dropped my wife at the office, came straight here, and then just loaded up the live stream. Had a few things on hand, so I think it's gone okay, this stream anyway. And really, I was just talking off a couple of updates really. So it got on for a while now. Maybe it's too long for people. Okay, so I don't really see too many more. There were a lot of Steam Deck takes that I saw earlier this morning, but I don't really see that many at the moment. So we'll just go with what we have, I think. Okay, well, we'll probably leave it there. I might just scroll down a little bit later. But let's go to the first one. This is unbelievable take. Okay, so PC Gamer. Obviously, they have a PC sort of orientated mindset. So PC Gamer says, the Steam Deck has me ready to ditch my Switch for good. And I said, that's a weird take, and the Steam Deck played Nintendo Switch games. So I find it unbelievable how I guess people are almost at the point where, oh, look, this is a portable, I can play games on it, therefore I don't need the Switch. But the reason why most people buy the Switch is for the Nintendo games. And so you can't play Mario, Zelda, and all of that sort of thing on this Steam Deck. At least not easily. Like, not if you'll have to go and emulate the system. And then there are other issues that you have to think about, like online, Nintendo Online, whether you'd be able to do that with an emulated Switch. There are things like detachable Joy-Cons, where you could play in tabletop mode with a regular Switch. And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why this doesn't actually replace the Switch or make it irrelevant. So I suppose, everybody's got their own, I guess, way of thinking or mentality. And obviously for PC Gamer, maybe they thought, well, I've been using the Switch like a Switch Lite, so in a single player mode. So yes, in that case, and maybe they were playing PC games on their Switch, like play Dark Souls Remastered or play other. There are actually a lot of PC games on Switch, so maybe he was doing that. So yeah, sure, okay, I get it. Like, you could play PC games much better on the Steam Deck than you can on the Switch. So that makes sense. But a general comment like what he said there, that kind of neglects all of the other Switch games and all of the other Switch functions there. So honestly, like, if you were to, if you had, say, Zelda, for example, I could understand you wanting to emulate the Wii U version because the Wii U version ran at 20 FPS. So if you can emulate that onto your PC, play it at 4K 60 FPS, yeah, of course it makes sense to go and emulate the Zelda Breath of the Wild and play it on your PC and play it better rather than struggle with it at 20 FPS on the Wii U. But if you have something like Mario Party where you have detachable Joy-Cons, you can play it on tabletop mode. You can have 2 Nintendo Switches and 4 Joy-Cons playing the same game at the same time with 2 Switches on the table. Yeah, I think that makes sense to play it that way, like with a Switch. And you wouldn't be able to do that with a Switch Deck. And I don't really know how much performance value performance adds to many of these Nintendo titles. For example, like if you emulated Animal Crossing, okay, you can get it at 4K, but the 720p version is still pretty good. Like it looks really clear. The text is really nice. Everything is sized properly on the handheld screen. So, it's just so much easier to like pull up that cart into the Nintendo Switch and you're going straight away. So that's why the Switch is still very much relevant. And like, I don't really see a reason to to just drop the Switch, like to dump it. You still have a ton of first-party games that work really well with the Switch anyways. And so the Steam Deck, like if you're choosing between playing Baldur's Gate, for example, then yeah, maybe you want to play it on the Steam Deck. But if you want, you still need the Nintendo Switch to play Nintendo games. Thought it'd be interesting to see some of these comments. Switch Stream Gaming says, seriously, ready to ditch your Switch? Okay, say goodbye to ever playing any Zelda or Mario game or Pokemon for that matter. LOLs. What a clueless article. For those of you who want to know what it really is without the marketing BS, link below. Okay, so I guess this is a someone from, or maybe he made his own video. Okay, the next one says, well, have fun not playing Breath of the Wild 2 or Metroid if ain't that deep, but yeah, Steam Mobile is cool. I'll play them both on my Steam Deck with a Yuzu emulator along with all the great GameCube games Nintendo won't give us. Yeah, a lot of the PC fans, and I would say PC fans generally, have jumped onto this, oh, we're just going to emulate all the Switch games. Like it's a knock on the Switch. I don't think the Switch gamers really mind that much unless you're talking about like, okay, you're going to emulate that at 4K, then maybe I think they would start to get a little bit jealous. But if you're just going to emulate that without all the onlines and all of that sort of thing, then I think most people are just going to just get Mario and Zelda and play it on the Switch. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. So, Sebastian, now, there are going to be a couple of other people that I talk about as well, and this is not really a knock on them. I'm not trying to burn them or put them on blast or anything like that. I talk to them regularly. So, Sebastian, if you're actually watching this, I'm not putting you on blast. But it's fine to, disagree, and then I think it's important to show other viewpoints because if I just keep showing my own viewpoint, what's really the point of that? And also, I've been talking about my point for like an hour anyway. Okay, so Sebastian says, yes, it can. Let me backtrack a little bit. So I said, can the Steam Deck play Nintendo Switch games? And obviously, this was a not rhetorical question, but like this is a rather obvious question. The Steam Deck would have problems with at least some of the functions with the Nintendo Switch games, even if you could emulate them. I didn't even say anything about emulation, but Sebastian said, yes, it can through emulation and at a superior graphical quality to boot, which fair enough, but then he says this basically renders the Switch relevant, and I don't think it renders the Switch irrelevant. I think people who like Mario and Zelda are going to buy Mario and Zelda on Switch until it gets to a point where it's obviously so inferior and it's so easy to emulate it. Like the convenience is the same as the convenience on just playing it natively on the Switch. That's okay. They're going to start emulating everything now. And then the Switch is, yes, like you say, could be irrelevant in that case. But I think there's still a way to go with that. And I don't think we're too far off a Switch 4K model anyway. We're probably going to get the Switch 4K next year, so I don't think it's really that far. Plus, I would bet that most of the games that you buy now on the Switch, at least the physical ones, will carry over to the Switch 2. They usually are pretty good with that sort of thing. Like with the DS, you can play Game Boy Advance games. With the 3DS, you can play DS games. So I think you should be able to do that. Now, digital games, they've had problems in the past with carrying over content, say like from the Wii to the Wii U, but I think they've more or less got that under control now. So I think that stuff that you buy on Switch right now digitally should carry over to the Switch too. I also said still weird to buy a game and emulate it when there's less steps in just putting the cart in your Switch and playing it. But if it plays way better, I suppose I could see people doing it. What about online though? Can't really play something like Smash without Nintendo Online service. Yeah, online's a good point, but pretty sure you could somehow emulate that too if you have a legit game. And I believe even a Switch for some system files. And it doesn't render the Switch irrelevant. Nintendo fans are going to keep playing on their hardware with Joy-Cons is split screen and tabletop mode, or play 2 Switches in Mario Party with 4 Joy-Cons. Let's go to the chat. Steven, how are you? Steven says, one knock on the Switch is that the games are so expensive, especially when compared to Steam sales. Yep, definitely. So there's so many ways that we can like frame this conversation as well, because initially that was my thought. I had a GBD Win 2, or I bought one because I thought, okay, I really like the Vita, but all these Vita games are starting to come over to Steam, so maybe I should just get the Steam version, because I was paying like, 2-3 times less for the Steam version of that Vita game. Like for example, some of those dungeon crawler games, like the dungeon role-playing games that you can get, were super cheap, like $5 on Steam. Like I think it was like Merry Skeleton Nightmare was like $5 on Steam on sale. And then on the Vita, you didn't have to pay like $45-50 for the actual physical copy. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy these things on Steam. It's so much cheaper. And then when I got the GPD Win 2, I found that not everything I wanted worked perfectly. Now that's probably to do with the fact that it had the Intel integrated graphics, and that integrated graphics didn't work so well for games that didn't know about this integrated graphics. So what I mean by that is like games back in like 2005 or 2008, they weren't programmed for this integrated graphics that was made in say like 2014, 2015. So it didn't really work well, and there wasn't any compatibility. And then anything after like 2015 and 2016, there were many games that were too powerful for this integrated. So those also didn't work. So there was a very specific set of games that worked for the GBD Win 2. So I was like, okay, compatibility wise with a Switch, everything just, when I say just works, you put the card in and it works, right? Whereas with the GBD Win 2, you still have an issue where you don't know before you buy it whether it's going to work or not. Now you have that 2-hour refund system, but sometimes that refund system, maybe you a couple of hours into the game and then it breaks. So there can still be many problems with it. So this is something where, because you're running on a low powered system now, you're going to have to consider or make sure before you buy games that it's going to run well on your system. And I think with the Steam Deck, there's going to be lots of people now who have it. Whereas the GPD Win 2, it wasn't like you could just go and ask people whether it's going to work or not. Not enough people had it. So at least with the Steam Deck, you're going to have more people that have it that you can have support for. But that's one thing to think about. The difference between, say, like a Switch where a lot of things work, and then the GBD Win where it kind of doesn't work as well. And the other thing, of course, is like you say, Switch games are so expensive. Yeah, Nintendo games, $60, very expensive, and they never reduce the price. And I've complained a lot on it on my Twitter anyways. On Twitter, I've been saying $60 games, I wish Nintendo would just discount a little bit, give the fans something for games that maybe they weren't going to plonk down $60 for, but if you gave them $10 or $20 off, say like $50, $40, then maybe they will consider it. Now, $50 isn't all that much or much less, but that may give room for the retailer to also discount as well. So from $50, it could go down to $45, and that $40 game could go to $35. And so I think Nintendo, I don't think they should draw a line in the sand on $60. I don't think that's how people really work, or how fans really want to work. I think fans want to pay for something with however much use they're going to get out of it, or if they're undecided on something. So having a $60 line, it's almost as if it's like, hey, Nintendo saying, you either take it or leave it. And it's not a very good or popular system. I think especially in something like the entertainment industry, where you're trying to get fans or building good, good hype or good moral system. How long before Steam Deck comes in other colors? That's a really good question. Will we even get like a revision first of all? So maybe if you get a revision, you'll get different colors. And so, yeah, with the Switch, now I will add finally to that Switch is so expensive question, is that at least your hardware is somewhat cheaper, okay? Let's say you are buying, I was going to make the argument to the Neo, which was like $900, but let's do the $650 to the Steam Deck, the most expensive one. So the $650, it's about $400 difference of the Switch Lite. And so for $400, you might be able to get 8 games, 7 or 8 $60 games. So you could get quite a few Zeldas, quite a few Marios, Smash, Mario Kart, that sort of thing. And you'd have a number of games to play on your Switch Lite or Switch before you have just the system itself with the Steam Deck. So that's kind of another thing that you can also think about. And the thing is, like, I bought 10 games in June for the Switch, and they might have like 80 to 100 hours of gameplay in them. So maybe you get less games, but some of these games are really long, and they're going to take you a long time to play. So there's a lot of different factors. Like, sure, okay, those games are really cheap on Steam, but the games aren't exactly bad on Switch, and they're quite long as well. So they more than make up for it in terms of like, oh, you see it as $60, but actually you get $80 80 hours of gameplay anyway on each one. So it's not that bad. So I bought like 10 games in June, and I plan to make a video, by the way, but I just haven't got around to it. Got so much Steam Deck news, but with those 10 games, I think it's going to take me a few years to finish all of them. And that's just with 10 games. So how many games do we really need? Like, I got 400 games on Steam, so I don't really need that many games. But of course, now that I mentioned that, if you buy the Steam Deck, you're going to have all of your old Steam games as well. So that's going to be great. Okay, so this is kind of the mindset that I have with the Steam Deck. So I am kind of with the same sort of thinking with Lady Weird Sloth Cow. And I don't think a lot of people, unless they actually have had a GBD Win 2, that they have this type of mindset. But before I get into that tweet, let's go to this chat from Steven. Forgot what publication, Bloomberg, the OLED was only a $5 to $10 implementation. Nintendo is making bank on the new OLED version with old internals. Yep, so yeah, I saw that as well. It's $10 extra for the OLED. So really, yeah, it's not that much in terms of costs, which is why they're doing it, which means they can also upsell that. And now we can't really be upset at a company, because that's what a company is supposed to do. A company is supposed to make money. Of course, as consumers, we can be mad that, oh, look, now we have to pay $50 more. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, this is kind of like a predictable thing from a company. Like, do I really even expect this company to make consumer-friendly decisions anymore? When was the last time we had a price cut on anything? Even the PS4, how much is the PS4? I think it's like $199 or $299 at the moment. And in the past, we would have got like $100 console at the end of his life. But at the moment, I guess with like money and inflation and all of that sort of thing, that it's impossible to get a $100 console or $150. But I think, yeah, these companies, they don't really want to, or they can't offer any more discount on these systems, or they don't want to offer discount on these systems. So it's very unlikely that we see something consumer friendly from any of these like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft companies. South Memphis says, will Sony now be able to sell a $399 handheld? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to make a handheld because they're more focused on a primary single audience, which is why they got rid of the Vita. Nintendo is also focused on a primary single audience. So that's why with the Vita and the PS4, they were splitting their fan bases up to two segments. And they found that, okay, they're going to force the Vita players to go and play Sony games. If they want to play Sony games, play it on the PS4 or the PS5, the main system. I think most companies are going to go with one system now. And that's kind of why Nintendo made the hybrid, right? Like they had their handheld and also their console players. Now they fused them both together. They had a huge fan base with the 3DS. And now they basically upgraded them. And they also upgraded the Wii U console at the same time. So no, I don't think Sony is going to do a handheld. That's not their strategy. They don't really like it, I think. They don't like the Vita. Okay, but going back to Lady Weird Sloth Cow, and this is pretty much my mentality of the PC Portable. She says, I see a lot of criticism of the Steam Deck specs, especially the 64GB model, base model, and I might say something controversial here, but I think far too many people have bought into the myth of PC gamers being obsessed with the highest fidelity and AAA performance. Okay, I want you to take a look at the latest Steam hardware survey, specifically GPUs. The most popular by far is the 1060 at nearly 10%, with a 1050 Ti close behind. My own graphics card, the 3070, is just slightly more than 1%. Almost sounds like me. So I've got a 3070 as well. And she also has a GPU win too. And I don't have mine anymore. But yeah, I feel like we have the same sort of mentality. She says, the vast majority of Steam users are playing in 1080p. Far more people are using 1440p than 4K. The idea of the PC gamer who is always spending on the latest hardware and needs everything to run 120 FPS 4K, they're absolutely mythologized. Most PC gamers don't care at all. I cannot underpin just how much this guy doesn't exist, never mind being a core demographic. Okay, well, they do exist, okay, they do exist, but it's a very small group or niche group of people, almost in the same way as there's a small niche group of people who like low spec gaming or like portable PC gaming. But it's because I think most of the benchmarks and everything that we get, if we get a new graphics card, it's a benchmark and everything is ranked basically from the best graphics card to the worst graphics card. And people use it in graphics card wars, AMD and Nvidia card wars, and that's why there's this sort of mythology of like, oh, you need 4K 60, or this card needs 4K 60 because I need to buy it. I need to have at least 5-6 years with it, and everybody ends up watching those videos. Everybody ends up watching Gamers Nexus where he ranks all of the cards, but not everybody is going to buy a 3080, 3090, 3070, but everyone is going to watch those cards just to see how fast they're going to be. So yes, those things are very popular, but I think I kind of understand what she means is like most people end up not actually buying those expensive cards. I think that's a good lesson for everybody who's thinking or who's getting a little bit envious or jealous of people who have top-end hardware, is to just be happy with what you have, because that's also going to play games well. I don't think you're going to get a bad experience with pretty much anything that's on the market right now. Even if you go and buy a third-party emulated little handheld that you get, I think I can't remember, the Amber Nick or something like that, and I think Retro Dodo said it was the best emulator handheld. I really wanted one. It was like $100. And so even if you had just that, there would be so many games you could play with it anyway. So I think people are just gaming on whatever it is. And I understand where she's coming from with this. Okay, let's keep going. So she says, but you can't install Xgame on the internal storage of the base model. So she's referring to the 64 gigabytes eMMC, and maybe there are other games. I heard from my friend today that he had Borderlands 3 and Mass Effect, and it took him 250 gigabytes of storage space on his Neo. And yeah, so there's going to be lots of games like that that you probably won't be able to run on, but you would be able to put that onto your micro SD card. But I think, and actually the performance of that will be pretty much similar to the eMMC memory. Okay, so she says, I think this attitude is looking for edge cases, as if people aren't going to load it up with all the indies from their existing library and go hog wild. Yeah, so I think there are people who are AAA gamers and who are indie gamers, and of course there are going to be people who play both, but you're almost talking to some people who are AAA gamers now, and those AAA games, they do exist, like people who only play AAA games, like say they might play Grand Theft Auto 5 or Skyrim, and then that's more than enough game for them, and so they don't really play any of the other games, they don't play a lot of the indie titles, so they just play those things. So yeah, I sort of see the concern there, but at the same time, this console, like I've said before, this Steam Deck, because of those storage spaces of 64, 256, and 512, I don't think it was really meant to play the latest AAA games that you're getting on late stage PS4 or PS5. I think that should be really clear with this. So let me keep going, because she explains exactly who this Steam Deck is for. So she says, I'm in the target demographic for this device. For example, I've been using the GPD Win 2 for years now. It's a fantastic device and I've gotten so much use out of it. Just like the Steam Deck, it has an SD card slot, and I have a 64 gigabytes micro SD card in it. Let me tell you, I have no noticeable difference in performance running games off of the SD card. The kind of thing I have installed on it, it's stuff like Slay the Spire, Griftlands, Monster Train, Hollow Knight, Dark Souls, XCOM, and many more. I've got dozens of games installed here, and probably get as much use out of this as I do on my desktop. No, you probably won't be able to fit the latest bloated COD game on the base 64 gigabyte Steam Deck, at least not without an SSD card, but you know what will fit? Troubleshooter is only a few gigs, and I know I'll be installing that and having Korean anime XCOM on the go. Nobody is looking at this and thinking, piffed. It's not going to run 4K 60 FPS Call of Duty, no care. Everyone who's interested is going to be looking at their existing Steam libraries and thinking about how many of the games they already own they're going to load up on it and play. This right here is spot on. Out of when I was with the GBD Win community, yeah, it's more about, okay, what's going to run, how is it going to perform, and whether that's going to be good or not. And people already know, people are pretty cluey about specs and stuff, so they know what the GPD Win 2 is likely going to be able to use it to play with. And so this is not like you buy an RTX 3070 and you can just go wild and play everything and everything just runs perfectly fine. This is something where you're going to have to tinker around with things. You're going to have to tinker around with the settings. Some games, I think, like when we had the GBD Win 2, you even had to go into like the INI file of like The Witcher 3, for example, and set like how much grass you want to have so that it could run with a decent enough frame rate. That's the level that you might have to get into for low spec gaming. And this is exactly her point, is like, She wants to play these type of games, and there are a lot of games that you can play on the Steam. She already accepts the fact that you can't play Call of Duty, most likely on that 512 gigabyte. So if that's the case, then even the 64 gigabyte model for those games that she listed there would still be reasonable and still work well on that $399 system, which is why I said there's still a use case for the 64 gigabyte model. I'm going to get to somebody's tweet who says the 64 gigabyte model is e-waste. But this is why I believe there's so many games on Steam anyway. The 64 gig, provided that it's not too hot and provided that the eMMC performance is okay, and that is not extremely slow for things that we expect. Like, it should at least meet our expectations with some games. It just can't be like completely terrible, and I don't think it's going to be, because otherwise Valve wouldn't go for this eMMC model. Like, I don't want it to only play games from like 2005 and before. That would be kind of dumb. So it's got to be like, you got to be able to play at least Switch level games on this 64 gigabyte eMMC model. So that's my expectations for this. Okay, so she keeps on going about some stuff. And yes, there's going to be some games that it's going to struggle with, but those are going to be edge cases. It's running control smoothly is a good idea of where performance for AAA games will be. Judging it on what it can't run is genuinely missing the appeal of the device. The other thing was, I saw them run control on this, and I've got to say, like, a lot of the AAA games these days require higher resolutions to make it look a little bit more nice. Like, say 1080p, 1440p just generally looks nicer than a 720p. It's not like, oh, 720p is going to be exact replica of 1080p, because at that point you do lose some kind of detail, because there's so much fidelity at the moment and so much extra detail in games these days that once you start running it at a lower resolution, like a 720p, you end up starting to lose a lot, and then things start to get smudged a lot between details and stuff, that it doesn't work as well. Now, older games end up looking really clean on 720p because maybe previously before people were developing in 1080p, 720p, maybe even 480p. When you go from 480p to 720p, it looks really clean. And so that's kind of like another thing to think about when you go from, say, like 1440p to 720p. You lose a little bit of detail and it gets a little bit blurred. I don't know if you guys have tried running 720p on the latest games, but it doesn't look that great on the PC. But anyways, so she says control runs smoothly, 720p. It's almost as if, like, I would say, I probably don't even want to play games that are too performance intensive on this system, because I don't think that would be the best experience for it. For example, like even Control, I think Control still needs it's still quite performance intensive. And so for something like that, I'd rather just play on the PC with the 90X 3070. I get a better experience. But of course, maybe some people can't. And so if they can get that experience playing the game on the portable, then that's also okay for them. I'm not trying to dismiss them either, but I'm just saying, like, if you have a choice, for me, I would probably just play it on the PC. I think I've said that quite a lot, so I probably won't say it again. Okay, so she finally says, I expect the 256 gigabyte version is going to be the most popular by far. I think the 512 is going to be, because for most people, a $100 jump is not that bad. And we don't really know yet if we can upgrade the SSD or not. Even though the slot is there, it might be a bit tricky to do. It's got the nicest price point storage, but I do feel the 64 gigabyte version is a good entry price if you can easily slap a cheap 128 gig SD card in there. It's literally what I've done with my GBD Win 2. I would go even further than that, because I recently bought a 256 gigabyte stick for the Switch, and I would, if it was me getting the 64 gig, I would get almost a 400, 500 gigabytes micro SD, or even a 1 TB micro SD. And yeah, the one micro SD is about $70. But I think that would be worth it just to have everything there on the one go. Sorting my library by install size, there's only a handful of games that break 64 gigabytes. Stuff like Sekiro, Dark Souls Remastered, they're relatively small install sizes. So she's got a few games that she's installed on there. You can play a lot of things on this system. And it's basically the best performance by a country mile on these portable PCs. I think the Aya Neo is about 800 or 900 gigaflops. And this is going to be 1.6 teraflops. Of course, that is at 15 watts. And if you wanted to, and what I would do would probably be played around 7 or 10 watts. So you're looking at around 1 teraflop for this. Okay, what else have we got? So David Scott Jaffe, if you know, he's the director of God of War on PlayStation. He says, wait, this hooks up to a TV monitor. So for 650-ish bucks, you get a very good gaming PC, first party aside, most of which are hitting PC anyway. PC gaming is the best place to play. So question, does this become the least expensive but still quality entry into PC gaming? And I think he doesn't keep up, I guess, as much as everything PC as I do. I know with his YouTube channel, he loves getting into debates about stuff, loves getting into gaming debates. So maybe for him, in terms of PC stuff, well, for $650, in the past, that would have bought you a budget PC. So you would have got something that was able to play 1080p, probably 1080p 60 for most games, but probably couldn't do much more than that, than play it at medium detail. So I would expect that would be something like a GTX 1660 Super before the price rises from all of the cryptocurrency and mining. But now it's probably going to cost you $1,000 to get that GTX 1660 Super. But anyway, that 1660 Super is 6 teraflops. Roughly speaking, if we're going to compare all of these teraflops, like it's about 6. So that's way stronger than something like this. That said, you're playing a 720p, that 1660 Super is like a 1080p card. So this is still something which is the best APU or processor that you can get in this space, but it's still very budget. It's got a very budget sort of mindset, or like don't expect this to play everything. People sometimes forget, like on the Switch, like that the Switch has 400 gigaflops. It's literally nothing. So people kind of don't really think about it that much, because they might see, oh look, Switch, it's got Dark Souls, just like PC has Dark Souls. But PC, yes, it's the same game, but like you're playing a 720p on the Switch. So really, it's not really that powerful. So when he says, so for 650-ish bucks, you get a very good gaming PC. It's not going to ever be as good as a desktop PC. And it's almost like you're trading off the performance for portability. This is a luxury good that you don't mind trading the performance away to game at some lower quality. So again, this is something that is quite a niche product. Only a person with lots and lots of money to throw around will want to like go and pay for this very cool device, but performs less than what they can actually get on, say, like the PC. I hope that makes sense. You are playing with 1 teraflop here. I think that's the easiest way to think about it. And then on the PS5, you're playing at 10 teraflops. So where do you want to play? Are you going to give up your TV screen for a little 7-inch screen? It's something that people really need to consider. I mean, yes, it's very cool to have it portable and all of that. You lose a lot of the performance from like a proper desktop PC or a PS5 or Xbox Series X. Okay, let's go to the chat. Stephen, so I agree, to be honest, I may end up playing mostly JRPGs and less demanding console ports, reserve AAA games to my desktop. And that's really how the thinking of this probably needs to be, at least that's how I'm thinking about it. That's how I always thought about it. That's how the lady, what her name is, Lady Weird Sloth Cow, who has a GPT win, thinks about her system. It's not even, you could do it, right? You could play it on this Steam Deck. You could play AAA games on this desktop. But then if you're sitting right next to your desktop PC, it's almost like, okay, well, let me get the best experience from the desktop PC. Okay, I think there's a couple more to go, and that's probably going to be about it. We're running at 1 hour 45, and 2 hours might be a good time to stop it. Guys, if you have any more questions, put them in the chat now. There's this one more tweet to go, and then I'm probably about done. Hey, Greg. Hi, Jim. I would play old games, strategy games, and visual novels. Yep. Yeah, I think they would work really great, really comfortable playing on the couch with this thing. If the game actually is, I guess, with all of the UI and all of the elements on the screen, if they fit a handheld really well, I think this is going to be a very good system for that type of thing. Because don't forget, like, you look at something like Animal Crossing, okay? Okay, so I'm playing Animal Crossing right now with the kids. And if you look at some of the text, for example, let's hope I can get to some text here. Okay, so imagine this is like a 720p screen. Imagine if this is a 720p screen and how big the text is for it to be legible on a handheld. And then what you sometimes have is, like on Switch, you have these third-party ports of games. And let me show you that. Now, this is a screenshot that I took from WRC9, and as you can see, the entire interface is designed for PC gaming or a large screen, and so it's hard to read this writing here where it says training, extreme. I would say it's at the point where it's uncomfortable now, but if you look at this text right here under training and this little picture here, that's almost impossible to read on a 720p screen, 7-inch screen. And I was playing on a 5.5-inch Switch Lite. So, I mean, you could barely make it out. You could read it. But obviously this thing was literally designed for a desktop experience and not a handheld experience. And you run into that problem a lot on the Switch because it has both the handheld mode and also the docked mode on the TV. So a lot of the third-party companies don't really think about, like, when they're porting stuff, they just port the entire game, fix a few front-end things, make sure, like, you know, the button layouts are okay, make sure the online works, blah, blah, blah. But for them to go back and redesign the whole game or reimagine everything, all of the graphics and everything, I think at sometimes they don't bother about that with ports. And I think you're going to have a very similar thing with the Steam Deck as well. And I'm not trying to put people off from buying one, but there are the type of things that you have to think about, like whether all of these games that were actually made for the desktop is going to work nicely with a 720p. Now, of course, like when I'm driving in the game itself, the game is perfectly fine. So that's why, you know, they don't really bother about this too much, because to fix something like that small text is just going to take them more time and cost more than it's actually worth. So I wouldn't even call it lazy. It's just a matter of economics for many of these companies. And yeah, you could say it's a little bit greedy and all that, but it's almost expected that they wouldn't fix it. So you kind of run into desktop versus handheld problems of fitting something on a large screen versus fitting something onto a small screen. And there are some things that are designed for a large screen and it doesn't translate into the desktop, into the handheld experience. And I think you guys can think of a lot of cases like this, even with something like the Steam Deck. You can see it right here in their marketing materials where they're playing Baldur's Gate. And let's see if she goes to actually showing you, I don't know if you can, you see, so she's playing Disco Elysium. So Disco Elysium looks like it runs pretty well. Let's go to another one where they're playing Baldur's. I think they are playing Baldur's Gate somewhere. Doom Eternal will work great. Crusader Kings would be pretty cool. Docked anyway. I don't know about the handheld experience for Crusader Kings, because man, the text would be crazily small, but it would be so cool to play Crusader Kings on a handheld. So they really they'd have to make a new version where they resize everything, and then it would work better. Factorio would work all right, but you can see that some of the UI elements at the bottom here, then you're going to have to decide between whether you want to play on a desktop PC or on the portable. I don't see they did have Baldur's Gate here. Oh, here we go, Baldur's Gate 3. And some of these icons, if you're trying to work out like what spell to use, maybe you'd have to like squint a little bit harder than you'd normally have to, unless of course you know exactly where everything is, then that would be okay. And then also the other thing is like, maybe you like a keyboard, right? Like maybe you want to have all of those spells and potions and everything at your fingertips, and you'd have to remap stuff for this. So that's something else that you'd have to think about. And don't forget, like, as I always say, you know, I'm trying to not go down the path of like buying every console anymore, because it kind of takes away time from your main console. So if you buy a PS5 and an Xbox Series X, well, you have to split time between the two. Otherwise, it's not really kind of worth it. If you only have 10 hours to play a game, then you have 5 hours for the PS5, 5 hours of the Xbox Series X. You may as well just spend 10 hours on one system. So this is kind of where I'm at with the Steam Deck as well. Like, it's awesome and cool, and I want to cover it for this channel. But I'm still thinking about whether or not to get one. And it really depends on how much time I got. Okay, let's get to this last tweet from Maya Tech Rants. But before I do, Steven says, ouch, I just checked the prices and 2030 NVMe SSDs are not cheap. So are they the smaller ones and the 2080 are the longer ones? Is that what it is? The 2230 NVMe SSDs. Let me know if you're still around, just like, you know, put in some prices into that chat so I can have a look. All right, so Maya Tech Rants, he says, the Steam Deck is more expensive than a PS5 or Xbox Series X. Okay, if you say that's the 256 or the 512 gig model, yes, it is more expensive. Yes, you can get one with eWASTE, eMMC storage inside, but you really, really shouldn't. Not only does eMMC perform like garbage, 64 gigabytes is literally not enough size to fit many single games. So the 64 gigabytes, I would say, like, is only just for if you put the Steam OS on there, and then you put a couple of games on there, but you're going to just go and buy a like 500 gigabyte or 1 terabyte micro SD. So that 64 gigabytes is really just for the operating system. I wouldn't expect to put too many things on there. It's kind of like the Switch 32 gigabyte model. So yeah, if you buy a Switch, you know you have to buy a micro SD card. So it's pretty simple. I think in terms of performance, it's going to perform like the Switch. So I think the eMMC storage is fine, for especially for like older stuff. It's going to be fine. And then, as I said, it's going to be like, for the early PS4 stuff, it should be fine. Mid PS4 stuff, maybe you have longer loading times. I wouldn't bother with AAA games on the eMMC storage. And then the other thing, of course, is I think it's going to run cooler. So it's going to run like more like a Switch in terms of power. Because if you think about it, the Switch runs at about 10 watts, 12 watts now. and has eMMC storage, I think it's going to be roughly the same sort of temps in terms of like holding it. So it's not going to be as hot as something like with an SSD. I think the SSD is going to add some more heat to it, so it's going to be a little bit hotter. But in terms of cooling and stuff, we don't really know what the cooling solution is for the SSD. It'd be cool if they actually showed us, like maybe like a couple of months down the track, maybe they'll open one up for us all to have a look and see how hard it is to replace the SSD, what the cooling is like inside. I hope they do that before this thing actually goes on sale. Kind of like what PS5, even Sony did a teardown themselves of the PS5, which was super cool. So that was, yeah, I really like that. Okay, so anyway, my tech rants. The only thing the $400 version is good for is remote play, streaming your game from PC to handheld. And there are way cheaper devices that can accomplish this. I disagree, because now you have the single fastest PC portable system out there, better than an Neo, better than the GPD Win. If a $400 version of the of this Steam Deck is bad, then the GPD Win for like $900, yes, you get an SSD on it, but you get a faster CPU, GPU with this, and it's going to play those games really well. Whereas maybe the GPD Win 3 with, say, 800 gigaflops isn't going to play things as well as this. I did say, okay, I don't quite agree. The eMMC is for people who know exactly what games they want to play in their backlog from mid PS4 earlier. Tons of games worth playing on eMMC still. By the way, I bet those SSDs get hot unless they have some cooling inside. Okay, so I think there's... I might just read some of the other comments because he basically goes into more or less the same things. Tech Epiphany writes, all models come high-speed micro SD card. And AY Sirius says, I'd love to see you using the PS5 or Xbox Series X in the same situations a Steam Deck can be used in. So he's obviously referring to, like, you know, it's not portable. So the PS5. And then Maya Tech Rand says, okay, so you can take this camping as well then. So $530 is a good price for a camping machine. Okay, so he's just trying to, I guess, be a little bit of a smart aleck with this, but that's cool. I usually interact with my tech rants, and yeah, we have a good time. But I just thought I would bring that up because there are some people out there who think the 64 gigabyte model is a waste. Although that's not my opinion. I think the 64, I think there's a use case for it. On Steam Deck, the biggest unknown spec to determine performance right now is the memory channels Valve is using on their LPDDR5. The potential performance delta is huge. We're talking a mild increase versus Ryzen 5800U or a massive leap. Okay, so if we look back to, say, Ryzen 2200, 2400G, I had one of those and I tested that. I had to use the single stick of RAM. And I forgot what it was. It was the cheapest RAM because I was just buying a system just for my mom to use for browsing the internet. And in single channel RAM, 2400, I believe, that was like 30-40% less performance than if I ran it in dual channel 2400. So we put in some other sticks like my brother had, and we tested that out as well. But yeah, there's a huge difference in terms of, like, if you just double the amount of RAM or double the speed effectively. So if you go from, say, like right now you could get like 3200 RAM and now you're going to 5500 RAM, that's going to make a big speed increase. So my bet is that it's going to be quite a big leap in terms of performance. Now, I don't think it'll be bottlenecked by the RAM because in the past, the system RAM has always bottlenecked the APU. So I think it's going to keep giving performance the faster you go with this LPDDR5 RAM. I wonder how they're going to test it though. It's not like you're going to get an LPDDR4 system anyway. Maybe you can have some sort of graphics card with like 1 teraflop graphics card with LPDDR4. Yeah, I guess maybe you could like test a Cezanne system, which would be the closest thing, with 8 Vega units, do some calculations on that to get it to RDNA2, and then you'd be able to see what the performance delta is with LPDDR5. But I think there is going to be quite a big difference with the LPDDR5. I don't think you're going to be limited by that 5500, because even when you're on, say, discrete graphics card, you're on GDDR6 memory that's operating at like 16 gigabytes per second anyway. So I think 5500 is not going to limit it. So I think, yeah, there's going to be a big leap in performance. So it won't be that mild increase. But that's my guess. And Nerdtech is more hardcore than I am. He knows a lot more about hardware. So I think, yeah, I might reply to that a bit later. Okay, so I've run through all of the comments. We're at 2 hours at the moment. We've done 5 hours of Steam Deck talk this weekend. And I'm sweating like a pig here because like I've got the aircon at the back, but I've got a green screen here and it's blocking all of the aircon, so I'm sitting here kind of hot. I'd like to, yeah, if I've done everything that I have to do, then I might take a break and go. But you guys, so there's 18 viewers now, and none of you guys have dropped any chat in the chat. I'll give it 5 minutes before I go. So if you guys have any more things to say in the chat, anything else you want me to talk about, I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Just to recap, the couple of things I said earlier today, the important news in the first 15-20 minutes of this show. So we had the SSD. So people weren't sure if the SSD was going to be replaceable or upgradable, and we've got some information and it looks pretty legit, and because there are a couple of people replying to this. So the first one, the question was, is the M2 SSD slot present in the base $399 version? And Gabe Newell says yes. So it's there. However, Plagman, and Plagman is Pierre Loup Graffet, who was the guy who was doing all of the interviews at IGN for the Steam Deck. He says, no, they didn't. It requires opening the hardware in unsupported ways, so warranty is in your hands at that point. The slot is behind EMI, which is, I think, like electromagnetic interference and thermal shielding. So it's not really usable, replaceable like a regular M2 tray on a laptop. So the slot is there. It's hard to get to. That's why on the IGN FAQ video, they said that it's not going to be replaceable. And I think for their audience, that kind of makes sense for the IGN audience, who probably wouldn't like just go to town and completely open this Steam Deck up. I think that kind of makes that answer made sense for their audience. But technically, you could still get to the slot in some way and put in your SSD. The second piece of news I had was the number of units for the Steam Deck in terms of the regions, and also the number for the different models that we had. So for the 512 gigabyte model, the US had 50,000 units, and Europe it was 8,400 units, and for UK it was 7,000 units. So it's interesting that the UK has as many units as Europe, even though the population is vastly greater in Europe. So it's going to be a lot harder to get your one in Europe. If you want one in Europe, you better go and reserve it. Seems like they fixed it. Canada was the same number as US, so it's NA total. So NA for 512 gigabyte model, we had 55,000 units. For North America, 256 gigabyte, we had 28,000 units. For Europe, it was 512 gigabytes with 9,600 units. And for Europe, it was 256 gigabytes for 5,000 units. For the UK, it was 512 gigabytes for 7,000 units. So those are all the numbers that they're making of this machine. You can see who posted it, so go and check it out for yourself if you want to. But those were the two important pieces of news, which is why I did this Steam chat for this Steam handheld device. Greg, so so I'm in my studio right now. So I have a green screen and it works really well. And then yesterday's stream, the RTX broadcast also has that sort of replaceable background stuff in RTX stuff that you're talking about. And the result isn't as good. It's not as clean. Like you can see on the shoulders here, there's no missing pieces. It works really well. Like I can move around. And because I got a light shining on me here as well, it works. The green screen works better. And then at home, when I'm just using the Nvidia broadcast, the quality is just not as good. But there's no room for me to put up a green screen there. My wife would just go nuts. But yeah, very hot at the moment. It must be like 30 degrees. Okay, so that's probably going to be about it. I'm going to leave this playing for a sec. Maybe yeah, I think we're pretty much done. I don't really have anything more to say about the Steam Deck right now. Maybe I'll have more to say tomorrow. But no, I think I'm about done. I did 5 hours of coverage for this thing, and I pretty much said everything I wanted to say. I think I got a lot of that GPT Win2 stuff off my chest as well, and I never got time to make a video for that, so I guess I put all of that stuff into this as well. Let me see. Yeah, so we'll just run for a couple more minutes, see if anybody else has anything to say in the chat. If not, then I'm going to go. So the last couple of days, so I put up that Red Dead Redemption 2 video of the DLSS, and there are a lot of dislikes on there, which at first I wasn't sure what was going on, because for me, I was always thinking, oh, DLSS, just get some performance numbers and see how it works. And then for image quality, well, it's going to be pretty hard to see on the internet anyway, so I'll just not worry too much about the image quality stuff. Just wanted to get the numbers out there, almost as if like just to test Nvidia's claims, whether the Red Dead Redemption 2 numbers were exactly what they said it was going to be. They said for 4K Ultra, they were getting about 40 FPS on an RTX 3070. And then when they turned DLSS performance on, they got about 60 FPS. I did want to test that out. And with that video, I did test it out. Then there was somebody else who said, oh, look, I can't see the image quality on this video. Well, no, of course not, because I split the screen into 3 different sections. One for 1080p, one for DLSS quality, one for DLSS performance. And so it wasn't really ever about image quality in that video. And then it was like, oh, well, why isn't it for DLSS quality? Why I need to see what the DLSS quality. I'm going to thumb you down for that. So I don't mind if people thumb me down. Seriously, I really don't. Like, but at least like you guys have got to. If you thumb down, then at least tell me like in the comments what you don't like. And fair game to the guy who didn't like it and then told me what was wrong. Now he said he couldn't see the image quality. And then at the time, that video that I made, I wasn't really going to do a video about the image quality, because I think that was something that you can just see for yourself anyway, rather than me telling you, hey, look, there's some noise on the screen, or this is a bit sharper than this other thing. So I knew if I did like image quality, it would take me another like, I don't know, 8 hours, 10 hours to make the video. The video would probably be like another 6-7 minutes. So I just kept it like 3 minutes so that I could get that video out there. I think I made the right choice anyways, but ended up getting a lot of dislikes, which is fine. I don't really care anyways. But now the last few days, I've been delayed by all of this Steam Deck stuff. So I haven't been able to do that image quality video for the DLSS. And I don't even know if it'll come out. It might be even a bit late. Like there's a kind of like really no point to bring it out anymore because it's been about a week and everybody else has probably gone on to see it in other videos anyways. So if, I don't know, maybe I'll link the guy to my explanation here. I don't think he really cares anyways. But if anyone actually read that message and were wondering if I was going to respond or if I was going to make a DLSS image quality video for Red Dead Redemption 2, I was. Now it's a bit late and I don't know if I'll ever get around to it. And just 2 days ago, I did start making it. So I did about 4 hours of work on this DLSS image quality video. Unfortunately, I captured everything in 30 FPS because I captured it in 8K. So I screwed everything up. So I had all of this footage. I did everything like 1080p in the quality mode, in the DLSS quality mode, DLSS performance, in 1440p, in 4K, and then did it for a number of scenes. And then I found out afterwards that it was 8K, 30 FPS, because it said in the Nvidia thing, the Nvidia broadcast or the Nvidia recording thing, Nvidia Studio it might be called, in that it says 4320p 8K, and I just read the 4 and I thought that was 4K. I selected the wrong thing, and yeah, I completely wasted 4 hours of work, which, you know, by the end of like recording 4 hours of stuff, especially when Red Dead Redemption 2 errors a lot in 4K, especially when you're jumping up 1440p and then 4K, there was some sort of bug in there. You go from 1440p performance and then you go to 4K, and then it would slow the entire game right down. You'd have to exit and quit out of the game, load up the game again. Very, very annoying. And so, yeah, that drove me nuts to record. I think I'm not even going to do it now. Now that I've explained everything to you guys, I hope you understand. I'm probably not going to do the DLSS image quality video because it's such a pain. I'm about halfway through doing it again, but is there really any point? Like, I think it might get less than 500 views anyway, so the only person who'll be disappointed will be that guy. Okay. Any other news? Not really. We're reaching 10,000 subs, which finally, I'm glad going to get to that milestone. I don't really think about the milestones too often, although I do check in on the subs thing quite a lot now because I'm so close to it. But subs, like personally for me, I don't really mind so much about subs. It's more the number of people that are actively watching your videos. So as you can see on my channel, if I post Lego video, it's going to get 100 views and nobody really cares about what I put out, even though I took like 3 days to make the video. But I put a talking head video on PS4 Minds, which took 3 hours, and then 7,000 people watch it. So I think it's more important that people watch it for me, for the success of the channel anyways, or that's more important, right? Like if you want views, people have to come back for you, because for the information, they can choose whoever they want to choose. Like maybe people are more interested in getting it from Steve from Gamers Nexus or Jay's from Jay's 2 Cents because he's more entertaining or whatever. So it's important that people come back to the channel to watch me, and that's just a fact, right? I don't really care if people like me or not, but like to get 100 views is kind of a waste of time. Like it's a waste of my time to do that type of video, even though I want to do that video. Like to do a lot of the technical stuff is also useful for me because it gives me a chance to learn about the game and learn about the technologies inside, so I can learn and pass something to you guys as well. Even though they don't get as many views, I do feel like I need to do them from time to time. Greg says that video clearly wasn't about image quality. The Lego video was very good at displaying DLSS image quality impact. Yeah, I brought that thing up in the Lego video because I noticed there was something wrong with the DLSS, because it wasn't something that it would be really acceptable for the developers. But I think maybe they just felt like, okay, this is fine for the time being, and we'll update it if we get a fix for it, that type of thing. So a good implementation of DLSS would be something like in Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, where you literally can't tell the difference between DLSS and the native version, whereas in Lego, you could move something around and it'd be very noisy. And that was probably because DLSS relies on motion vectors. If you're moving it around all over the place, then it's not going to know where to go for those first few frames, and that's why it creates that level of noise. Whereas say like maybe in a first person shooter, unless you're like moving the mouse wildly up and around and about, maybe you wouldn't get that noise. But yeah, we're getting to 10,000 subs, and so it, like for me, my mentality is almost like the subs is not actually the number of people that are actually watching my channel. The subs are the people who like the video enough that they want to click and support this channel, because they're not interested in everything that I gotta say. Like maybe they're just interested in some PS4 stuff, and I bring out a PS4 video like once every month. So at the moment, I've got subs like that. I've got like 5,000 people who are subbed to my PlayStation stuff, and then 5,000 people maybe who are subbed into my other stuff. So mostly the other stuff is like PC stuff. So maybe other people who have just PC users and have 10,000 PC users, and then they have more people who are actually coming back for their content. And then if you look at like how other people are doing, how other YouTube channels are doing, things like channels like David Jaffe, for example, who had a lot of growth recently. He went from like 15,000 to 35,000 subs this year. He has fans coming back like to watch him all the time. And again, like I'm not really that big on fans. Like I kind of like just talking to you guys as a fan, but David Jaffe has a lot of fans, so they keep coming back and clicking on his stuff, which is where that's the direction this channels in general need to go. There's tons of channels out there with like 100,000, 500,000 subs that don't even get that many clicks, views, that type of thing, and that's not where you want to go. It's not about subs, it's about people who come back all the time and watch stuff. And so whether you want to call that fans, or whether you want to call that like people who want to watch you just for your content, no matter what content you do, we really have to get to that space. And I don't really want to have to do things like Review Tech USA has to take off his shirt or whatever to do it, or get into a hot tub, or like, you know, play with cucumbers and roosters and that sort of thing. I don't really want to have to do that. Let's keep it like clean and talking about tech and talking about the things we like. And if you want to have a debate on something, like strong debates, yeah, sure, go ahead, because yeah, we can do that on this channel. I think that's going to cover it for today's stream. So we're going to call it a day. We're going to call it a night here. Thank you so much for joining me on this live stream. Remember, guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, I'm almost there at 10,000. So please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button to share this Steam Deck video out. And also join our Discord as well. We've got a cool Discord group in there. We'd love to have more people in there. We've got a few people. I would say like 3, 4, 5 people in there, really active, right? And then there's probably about 20 people there right now. But come in and, you know, say hi and talk about games with us. And, you know, if there's less people, you're going to get more attention. It's not going to be one of those Discord groups where everything just scrolls up and then you won't see it for like 5 seconds later. You can have meaningful conversations in the Discord chat right now. So yeah, come along in there. There's a link in the description below. But that's going to be it for this one. And I hope you enjoyed the Steam Deck coverage. There may be more, depends on what type of information we get, but I'll keep following it for you guys. because this is a really exciting thing. I really like portables. I really like PC gaming. I really like Steam. So this is exciting stuff. Okay, guys, see you guys again, and have a good night, have a good day wherever you are. Bye for now.